Anna, thanks. Western Mass News has learned the Easthampton School Committee will meet on Monday to discuss their school superintendent search. It comes after the virtual chaos that unfolded Tuesday night, with hundreds attempting to tune into a meeting hoping to speak out on the decision to revoke an offer for superintendent due to what was said in an email. Western Mass News reporter Kristen Burnell joining us live in studio with more on that. Kristen.
Chris, that meeting was canceled when the Zoom capacity was maxed out. Now the Easthampton School Committee will try again on Monday night with a conversation on the district's next superintendent. The Easthampton School Committee has announced their next meeting is set for Monday, April 10th, with the focus all about the district's next superintendent. A job offer went to West Springfield's interim superintendent Vito Perrone, but then was revoked last Thursday. Perrone tells Western Mass News the reason was due to an email he sent to the school committee chair and executive assistant, where he addressed the women as ladies, a term they took as an insult. This led to a large rally in support of Perrone on Monday. Community members hope to speak out during a virtual school committee meeting Tuesday night, but the Zoom meeting quickly hit capacity with hundreds of people logging on. And Mayor Nicole LaChapelle made the decision to cancel and reschedule it. She tells us the school committee is exploring ways to avoid that from happening again.
It's about, upping our licenses, finding the right tool, testing it, and then working with the committee's schedule to get it out there.
Western Mass News has obtained a copy of the agenda for the rescheduled Zoom meeting, with the beginning of the document stating part, quote, "During these challenging times, we are committed to bringing transparency and public participation to school committee meetings." After the call to order, members of the public will be allowed to speak out for up to 90 minutes, with each speaker having up to 3 minutes to talk. According to the school committee, they have set up strict rules for participants to follow. All who join the call will remain on mute until the chairperson will unmute their microphone, which will enable them to be heard. The chair will recognize members of the public in order of their use of the Zoom raised hand feature. Members of the school committee cannot respond to any comments made during public speak. The third item on the agenda will involve the superintendent candidate discussion and/or potential vote on a candidate to be the next superintendent. The fourth item on the agenda, school committee members will conduct a superintendent search discussion and/or potential vote on a candidate to be the next superintendent. The meeting will then remain an open session while the chair contacts the candidate to offer the position subject to negotiations and/or discuss the candidate's response to the offer of employment subject to negotiations. The meeting will then adjourn. Now, we did reach out to the two other candidates who were in the running to be the next Easthampton superintendent for further comment today, but have not yet heard back. We also reached out to Vito Perrone to see if he had any additional comments following this new agenda being announced, but we have not yet received a response. Reporting live in studio, Kristen Burnell, Western Mass News.
Kristen, thank you.